Hello and welcome to Firstpost Vantage with me, Saroya. Let's get started. Remember the good old days when peace seemed within reach, when oil prices breathed a sigh of relief, when there was positive momentum on the prospects of a second round? Well, that was last week. John F. Kennedy once said, "Let us never negotiate out of fear, but let us never fear to negotiate." Turns out Tehran is twice burnt, quadruple shy, and is not keen on dialogue. So what about the Strait of Hormuz? Is it open, shut, partially shut, shut, but you must first ask nicely, or open, but it depends on your aura? We will try and decode that for you tonight. While that back and forth continues, it continues to have very real consequences on ground, with two India flagships becoming targets of firing by Iran, something that is putting a strain on otherwise cordial relations between the two. And while it may appear that China has been rather calm, we will be taking a closer look at the Pacific waters, where another flashpoint appears to be brewing. All this and more lined up, but first, the headlines. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vows strict action after a soldier vandalizes a statue of Christ in Lebanon. He used a sledgehammer to strike the head of the statue. Israel has been conducting airstrikes across Lebanon after Iran-backed Hezbollah entered the West Asia war last month. Prime Minister Narendra Modi hails ties with South Korea as the two countries signed several key agreements. The talks between the two leaders focused on enhancing ties in trade, AI, semiconductors, and the Indo-Pacific. The South Korean president is on a 3-day visit to India. It is the first one by a South Korean leader in more than 8 years. Japan warns of a huge earthquake after a powerful tremor rattles the country's north. It is also prompted a tsunami warning. The 7.7 magnitude earthquake jolted buildings in capital Tokyo despite being hundreds of kilometers from the epicenter. Iraq reopens a key border crossing with Syria more than a decade after it was closed to trade. It was shut following the rise of the Islamic State group. All three border crossings between Iraq and Syria are now open. Until earlier this year, Kurdish forces controlled the post on the Syrian side. And Elon Musk snubs Paris prosecutors' summon over X and Grok. Weeks earlier, the billionaire had called the French authorities retards. X has been accused of interfering in French politics, while its AI chatbot Grok is under scanner over sexual deepfakes. It is week 8 of the crisis in West Asia, and still we see no clear signs of this conflict ending, at least not anytime soon. Instead, tonight, a new question has taken center stage. Will the next round of peace talks even happen? You see, last week there was optimism. Both sides were showing some momentum on the diplomatic front. Iran even announced the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz on Friday. And President Donald Trump welcomed that move. He went on a posting spree, in fact, to claim Iran won't close the strait ever. For a moment, it looked like this crisis could be moving towards de-escalation. But over the weekend, things took a sharp turn. The strait closed again. Iranian Navy fired on ships passing through Hormuz. The United States seized an Iranian-flagged ship. New threats were exchanged. And now, fresh uncertainty has clouded hopes of peace. Let me tell you what's unfolding today. Donald Trump says that US negotiators are heading to Pakistan. He says his team will arrive in Islamabad later today. The talks are expected to take place tomorrow. That is also when the fragile 2-week truce between the United States and Iran is due to expire. But Tehran says it has no plan to attend those talks. Look at what Iran said today.
As of now, as I am speaking to you, we have no plan for the next round of negotiations. No decision has been taken in this regard.
So that is the position from Iran today. No confirmation and no date accepted. In fact, Iran also says Washington is still insisting on what it calls unreasonable and unrealistic positions. So from Tehran's point of view, there is no basis yet for a second round. And honestly, the reason is not hard to see. Tehran says Washington cannot talk peace while raising pressure at sea.
We truly do not see any serious signs of resolve on the part of the United States. On the contrary, there are repeated and numerous indications that no seriousness exists in the U.S. when it comes to advancing diplomacy in its real, conventional sense, rather than diplomacy that means issuing dictates.
So Iran is clearly angry over the U.S. naval blockade of Iranian ports, angry over continued threats from Washington, and angry over the weekend seizure of an Iranian-flagged ship.
After that, by whatever means, an understanding was reached on this matter. We were confronted with their actions in the Strait of Hormuz, including what they have termed a naval blockade. In just the past hours, you witnessed that an attack was carried out on an Iranian commercial vessel. All of these are considered clear violations of the ceasefire.
Now, Trump says that ship tried to break the American blockade. He claims a U.S. destroyer fired on the vessel, damaged its engine room, and U.S. Marines then took control of it. Iran has warned of retaliation. We'll tell you more about that in a bit. So even before any talks begin, military tensions are rising again. At the same time, Trump is keeping up the pressure. Take a look at what he said on his social media platform, Truth Social. I'm quoting from it. This is what he said. "We're offering a very fair and responsible deal, and I hope they take it, because if they don't, the United States is going to knock out every single power plant and every single bridge in Iran. No more Mr. Nice Guy. They'll come down fast, they'll come down easy, and if they don't take the deal, it will be my honor to do what has to be done." So the message from Washington is very clear. Talks are still on the table. In fact, Trump is even reportedly willing to meet Iran's top leadership, that is, if a deal is struck. However, he has also chosen to maintain pressure. And this is, of course, shaping the mood inside Iran. Over the weekend, pro-government rallies were held in Tehran. Several participants said they support diplomacy, but do not trust Washington. Others said the war had given Iran new leverage. Listen to this.
The United States has so far honored none of the promises it made to us, and none of the agreements it signed with us. As a result, we expect that although the diplomatic track must in any case move forward, we should proceed with complete distrust toward America that has so far fulfilled none of its commitments.
We have negotiated before, and our negotiations did not reach any particular result. But one difference this time is that we have achievements on the battlefield. We have the Strait of Hormuz. U.S. bases are within our strike range. And in any case, countries that share interests with the United States are now ultimately under our pressure as well.
This tells you something important. Any Iranian team going for talks now also faces domestic pressure. But even as that political calculation continues in Tehran, preparations are already underway in Islamabad. Security has been beefed up across Pakistan's capital, key roads have been closed, and checkpoints have been deployed again. Banners describing the process as a step towards peace and stability have also appeared across the city. Meanwhile, Pakistani mediation efforts are also continuing. Its Prime Minister, Shehbaz Sharif, has spoken to Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian. Both sides discussed the latest regional developments. In fact, reports also say Pakistan's army chief has spoken to Donald Trump. he is believed to have told Trump that the US blockade of Iranian ports is an obstacle to a second round of talks. We're given to understand Trump has said that he would consider this point. But even as those efforts continue, there is fresh confusion on the United States side. A White House official said US Vice President J.D. Vance would lead the American delegation. Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner are also expected to be part of that team. However, Trump said yesterday that J.D. Vance would not go. But now it appears he's made a U-turn on that as well. So even things on the US side remain unclear. And that matters because the first round of talks in Islamabad already ended without a breakthrough. The meeting lasted about 21 hours, but there was no deal and no agreed way forward. So round two was always going to be difficult. And like I said, the core differences still remain. I'm sure you know what they are by now, but let me recap this for you. Washington wants curbs on Iran's nuclear program. It wants actions on Iran's enriched uranium stockpile. And it also wants open shipping through the Strait of Hormuz. But Tehran wants sanctions relief first. It wants the US blockade removed. And it says its civilian nuclear rights are non-negotiable. So this gap is only widening. But what does all of this mean? It means diplomacy is still alive, at least for now. But it is no longer moving smoothly. The ceasefire is close to expiry. The talks still have not been decided on. Iran has not committed to attending. The United States is still using threats as leverage. And the seafront remains tense, to say the least. Last week, the question was how quickly a deal could come. Today, we go back to the basics. Can the two sides even return to the same room? Now, just a few days ago, there was hope that Hormuz would open, and it did, briefly. On Friday, Donald Trump welcomed Iran's announcement with visible relief. The message from Tehran was simple. The strait was fully open, it said. Oil prices dropped nearly 10%. For a brief moment, it felt like the crisis was easing. Not for long, though. Within 24 hours, things changed. Iran shut the strait again. Why? Because Trump said the US blockade of Iranian ports would continue. Over the weekend, the United States Central Command confirmed a dramatic escalation. An Iranian flagship, Touska, was intercepted. It's a cargo ship, but what makes it interesting is its size. Measuring nearly 900 feet long, it's massive compared to other ships. Its weight is reported to be close to that of an aircraft carrier. According to the US Navy, the Iranian vessel was stopped by the USS Vows, which is a guided missile destroyer. It is equipped with advanced radar systems, missiles, and heavy artillery. It belongs to the advanced Arleigh Burke-class warships. The destroyer is about 505 feet long, with a crew of around 300. According to the United States, the ship was intercepted while it was attempting to evade the blockade in the Gulf of Oman. The United States says it repeated warnings to the vessel for 6 hours. It also fired several rounds towards the ship's engine room before seizing it. Marine traffic website reports the last known location of the vessel at about 45 kilometers of Iran's southern coast near the city of Chabahar. The US CENTCOM shared videos of the operation. One of them showed a monochromatic footage of Marines roping down onto the seized ship. It released with another video also. It showed the USS Vows issuing warnings to the Touska. Take a look.
We gave the flare. Now we're getting.
President Donald Trump weighed in after the incident. He said the Touska is under US Treasury sanctions because of prior history of illegal activity. He said the ship tried to breach the blockade, and I'm quoting him again here. It did not go well for them, that's what he said. The Iranian crew refused to listen, so our Navy stopped them right in their tracks by blowing a hole in the engine room. Sharp words. And Tehran did not keep quiet. It has called this armed piracy, a direct violation of the ceasefire, and it has promised a befitting response. According to the state media, Iran has also sent drones in the direction of US military ships.
After the clear aggression of America's terrorist commandos against an Iranian commercial ship in the waters of the Sea of Oman, the armed forces of the Islamic Republic of Iran were ready for a decisive confrontation with the invading American forces. Due to the presence of some crew members' families, and in order to protect their lives and safety as they were at constant risk, they faced limitations.
So what exactly is the status of the strait today? Not entirely open, not entirely closed. It's not functioning as a dependable trade route. Ships are turning back. Others are being escorted, intercepted, and even fired upon. Since Tehran reversed course on the Hormuz, just 2 vessels, 1 Chinese and 1 Indian, have entered or exited the Gulf. On the other hand, around 20 ships waiting to cross the strait have turned back. Some headed towards Oman, others simply stopped. The situation deteriorated further after vessels came under heavy gunfire. 2 Indian ships were fired upon mid-transit, forced to retreat. In one case, armed boats approached a tanker and opened fire. In another, vessels picked up gunfire over radio channels and abandoned their journeys entirely. And as always, energy markets reacted instantly. Oil prices surged again. As of now, Brent crude is trading at around $95 a barrel, jumping by over 5% in the past 1 day. Another oil index, the West Texas Intermediate, has jumped by similar points, trading currently at around $88 a barrel. And here's the bigger picture. Since this conflict began nearly 50 days ago, the world has lost over $50 billion worth of crude oil production. More than 500 million barrels gone. This is one of the largest disruptions to global energy markets in modern history. Around 13 million barrels per day of oil supply and 300 million cubic meters of LNG. These are now effectively trapped in the Gulf. Energy flows are tightening, prices are rising, producers have shut oil fields, and economies from Asia to Europe are feeling the strain. Even the International Monetary Fund is worried. It has now cut global growth forecasts from 3.3% to 3.1%, warning that the world economy could be thrown off course.
First, a larger or more persistent energy shock would hit Asia-Pacific countries unevenly. Second, economies that depend heavily on imported energy use are especially vulnerable. Third, risks are greater still where energy buffers and fiscal space are limited, or where remittances, tourism, or fertilizer imports add to the exposure. This matters in parts of South Asia, Southeast Asia, and key among the Pacific Island countries.
And here's the real danger. The Strait of Hormuz is now operating in a stop-start pattern. Open one day, close the next, safe 1 hour, hostile the next. And that uncertainty is expensive. Even if the guns fall silent tomorrow, recovery is not going to be immediate. Analysts say it could take months, perhaps even years. So this is the reality the world faces tonight. A narrow strip of water controlling global energy, a fragile ceasefire barely holding, and 2 powers unwilling to back down. Today, 21 miles of water is all that stands between order and chaos, between a slowing economy and a crashing one. Now, amid confusion over the operations in the Strait of Hormuz, two Indian-flagged ships became the latest targets of firing by Iran. And with it, a rare strain has emerged on India-Iran ties. No injuries were reported and the vessels were not damaged. But in New Delhi, the response has created a sharp diplomatic flashpoint. The Iranian envoy was summoned. India said it was deeply disturbed by the incident, and authorities say the Director General of Shipping is closely monitoring the situation and taking steps to ensure the safety of Indian seafarers and vessels in the region.
We have been in touch with Iran and others so that we can have safe exit of our ships through the Strait of Hormuz. The firing incident happened. This happened on Saturday. Two of our ships came under firing. We attach very high importance to the safety and security of our mariners, of commercial shipping, and that there should be unimpeded transit. The ambassador was told that these may be conveyed to authorities back home. We continue to be in touch with the Iranian authorities for the safety of our ships.
But this incident does raise serious concerns for many reasons. For starters, India is currently hosting the Iranian warship IRIS Lavan at the Kochi port in Kerala. It sought shelter amid the escalating war with the United States and Israel, and its crew received support in India, which is why you'd expect that Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps gunboats would not fire on Indian vessels. So then, what went wrong? Here's a little recap. On Saturday morning, as mediators in Islamabad expressed cautious optimism about a second round of US-Iran talks, IRGC gunboats fired without warning on two Indian-flagged merchant vessels in the strait. The two vessels, Jag Arnav and Sanmar Herald, were fired upon north of Oman while attempting to transit the strait and were forced to turn back after the incident. A third commercial vessel was struck by a separate projectile shortly after. One of them was reportedly carrying nearly 2 million barrels of Iraqi oil. Audio intercepts indicated IRGC gunboats fired during the encounter as vessels were redirected westward. The very same day, India's foreign ministry summoned Iran's ambassador, calling the incident serious and noting with particular concern that Iran had previously allowed India-bound ships safe passage through its self-declared maritime corridor. The attacks came less than 24 hours after Iran's foreign minister Abbas Araghchi declared the strait completely open to commercial traffic. Now, Iran's Joint Military Command reversed that position within a day, declaring that control of the strait had returned to strict management by the armed forces. The head of Iran's Parliamentary National Security Commission clarified what that means. All ships now require Iranian naval authorization and toll payment before transiting. Now, those tracking the situation closely are criticizing Iran for weaponizing the strait. But what makes the Indian dimension unique is the specific relationship Iran appears to have put at risk. After all, India is not a US ally conducting operations against Iran. New Delhi has refused to join the American blockade. It has avoided direct criticism of Iran at the United Nations. It has maintained active commercial ties throughout the conflict. In fact, India-bound tankers were among the first ships Iran allowed safe passage through its maritime corridor. So New Delhi is now left asking what changed. Amid growing questions here in India, Iran's representative in the country has moved to downplay the incident. The representative of Iran's supreme leader in India, Abdul Majid Hakim Ilahi, said he was not aware of the specifics of the incident, but did emphasize that the two countries have very close ties.
Our relationship with India, it's very strong relationship, very good relationship, very strong relationship. And before that also, while a lot of countries couldn't benefit from the Strait of Hormuz and getting their gas and oil passing through the Strait of Hormuz, but Indians, they got it because of good relationship between Iran and India.
Now, despite enjoying cordial ties with Iran, and being one of the few countries allowed to transit Hormuz, India has consistently pushed for the full reopening of the strait. Earlier this month, during a UK-hosted multilateral summit, Indian Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri raised concerns over global energy security, calling for de-escalation and safe navigation for oil and gas trade. He also pointed out how India is among the few countries to have lost mariners in recent attacks on merchant vessels in the Gulf. So far, at least 3 Indian seafarers on board foreign-flagged vessels have been killed, and 1 has been injured in incidents linked to the Hormuz crisis. Already hit by rising fuel prices and the pressure on the rupee, India also joined a meeting of over 60 countries in the UK this month, where world leaders discussed ways to reopen the strait, which is, by now you know, a critical energy artery, the disruption of which has sent oil prices surging. India, one of the world's largest importers of crude oil, has also repeatedly emphasized the need for stability in the region to safeguard its economic interests. India has made its position clear. Iran has provided assurances. Now the responsibility lies with Tehran to ensure safe passage of vessels belonging to its long-standing ally via this crucial waterway. Before we begin our next story, let me take you back to 1944. The Second World War was almost over, and the most powerful nations on earth sat down in a small town in New Hampshire called Bretton Woods to decide on one question: who controls the money? The answer was simple: the United States dollar. Every currency in the world would be pegged to the dollar. The dollar would be pegged to gold. That was 80 years ago. And today, quietly and gradually, that order is beginning to crack. Why am I saying this? Because there are 3 key signals. And the first is sitting inside the United States itself. Lawmakers in Utah, Georgia, Arizona, Oklahoma, and Iowa are pushing legislation to allow gold and silver to function as everyday currency, not replace the dollar. They're careful to say that, but alongside it. Now, why does this matter? Because these are not fringe voices, these are state legislators. And their argument is straightforward. The dollar is losing its purchasing power, inflation is eating into savings, and gold, they say, has always held its value. Now, they're not entirely wrong. Gold is currently trading around $4,800 a troy ounce, or around 30 grams, $1,000 higher than it was just a year ago. But here's the problem. Gold as a currency doesn't actually work. And almost every economist will tell you why. Because the same price swings that make gold attractive to investors make it terrible for everyday transactions. It's not practical. But the impulse behind it, that is very real. Here's the second signal. And this one is far more consequential. The United Arab Emirates has begun exploring what happens if access to US dollars tightens. Signs of financial strain are emerging in West Asia. The UAE is exploring emergency options to secure dollar liquidity. It is in discussions with the US Treasury for support measures. And the answer they're considering? The oil empire is considering settling oil trade and other transactions in alternative currencies, including the Chinese yuan. Not because it wants to, but because it feels it has to prepare. The request reflects wider Gulf concerns about oil trade, disruption through the Strait of Hormuz. This is the petrodollar system being questioned from the inside. Now, what is the petrodollar system? Let me break it down. In the 1970s, America struck a deal, primarily with Saudi Arabia. Oil would be priced in US dollars. Gulf countries would take their surplus revenues and reinvest them in American assets. US Treasury bonds, US markets. The result? The perfect loop. The world needed dollars to buy oil. Countries accumulated dollar reserves. Those reserves flowed back into America. America stayed rich and powerful, and the dollar stayed dominant. And then there's the third signal. For the first time since the mid-1990s, gold has overtaken US Treasury bonds as the largest reserve asset held by central banks globally. So countries are choosing gold over American debt. Why? Because of sanctions, because of geopolitical risks, because holding dollar assets means being vulnerable to American pressure. And after watching what happened to Russia's reserves, frozen overnight, many countries decided they didn't want to take that chance. Gold offers something dollar cannot: neutrality. Now, does all of this mean the dollar is dying? No, not yet, not suddenly. The dollar is still dominating. American financial markets are still the deepest, most liquid in the world. The yuan has capital controls. The euro has no unified backing. There is no clean alternative as of today. But here's what is changing. The certainty is gone, and we're not seeing this for the first time. In 2000, Iraq decided to price oil in euros. In 2009, Libya proposed a gold-backed currency for oil transactions. There are recent examples too. Take Venezuela. It had previously attempted to de-dollarize its oil trade to bypass the US sanctions, utilizing Chinese yuan. Euros in a shadow fleet for sales to China. The countries led by the BRICS bloc are actively challenging the dollar dominance in bilateral trade. And most recently, there were reports that Tehran is considering allowing tankers through Hormuz, but only if oil cargo is settled in Chinese yuan. So the dollar dominance is being doubted again. But is this the beginning of de-dollarization? Or is it simply a reserve shift? Countries quietly balancing their portfolios, hedging risks without any intention of toppling the system. The honest answer is nobody knows. And that uncertainty itself is the story. It was Good Friday. The West Wing was nearly empty. Yet Donald Trump was reportedly screaming. An American jet had been shot down over Iran. 2 US airmen were missing. And the President of the United States was furious. He was reportedly telling his aides the same thing over and over. The Europeans aren't helping. This is not the Trump you see on social media. This is the Trump his own staff don't want in the war room, according to a new Wall Street Journal report. Our next report tells you what is really happening inside the Trump war room.
On February 28th, Donald Trump launched a military campaign against Iran. His goal was simple: end Iran's nuclear program once and for all. They executed the top leadership, explosions hit Tehran, and according to a Wall Street Journal report, Trump was in awe. He was watching a video montage of explosions over breakfast. But here's the thing. Trump did not enter this war after years of planning. He entered it after two things: persuasive briefing from Benjamin Netanyahu in the Situation Room, and the memory of what happened in Venezuela. Trump thought Iran would be more of the same. It wasn't. Iran closed the Strait of Hormuz. 20% of the world's oil supply was choked. And suddenly, Trump was caught off guard. On Truth Social, he was talking about decimating Iran. But in person, his aides say he was panicking. Especially on Easter morning. That's when 2 US airmen went missing in Iran. Things got so bad that his team reportedly kept him out of the Situation Room. They felt his impatience would not help. Imagine that. a president being kept out of his own war room by his own staff. Days later, Trump posted his most extreme threat till date. Unless Iran struck a deal within 12 hours, a whole civilization would die. His own national security team had no idea it was coming. It was not part of any plan, it was improvised. Secretary of State Marco Rubio privately told colleagues it might actually bring the Iranians to the table. And soon a ceasefire followed, but it's fragile at best, and it is not stopping Trump's not-so-improvised posts. But this inside story gives us an insight into Trump's Iran bluster. Donald Trump campaigned on ending foreign wars. He spent his entire first term boasting that he never got America into a new conflict. And now he is knee-deep in one with no clear exit. And underneath all this bluster, there is fear, real fear. Like when the military proposed capturing Kharg Island. Kharg Island is the launch point for 90% of Iran's oil exports. The US military wanted to capture it. But Trump reportedly said no. He told his advisors that US soldiers would be sitting ducks. This is a president who has watched Jimmy Carter's presidency collapse over the 1979 hostage crisis, who has watched Joe Biden's legacy shredded by the Afghanistan withdrawal, and who knows that a foreign policy disaster can end everything. The midterm polls are already showing that. The war is dragging down Republican candidates. Gas prices are up by more than $1 a gallon. Donald Trump's ratings have dropped to an all-time low. So Trump may project complete dominance on social media. That is the same man who spent Good Friday screaming at AIDS while his team logged him out of the war room. The man threatening to destroy civilizations is the same man too scared to take an island. Trump wanted to reshape the global order, to be the man who solved the Iran problem that 7 presidents before him could not. What he's got instead is a war that will not end on schedule and a ballot box coming in November that does not care. And a ballot box coming in November that does not care how many clips of explosions the president watched over breakfast.
Let's now focus on the mediator. I'm talking about Pakistan. It wants to save West Asia. Sounds noble, right? There's just one small issue with that. It still cannot fix the crisis at home. Islamabad is preparing to host a second round of talks between the United States and Iran. Like I said, it could possibly take place tomorrow. That is, if Iran decides to attend. But Donald Trump says a US delegation is on its way. So Pakistan is moving ahead as if the talks are certain. Security has once again been beefed up across the capital, Islamabad. Key roads have been closed, checkpoints have been deployed, police and soldiers have been stationed across the red zone, and banners have appeared across the city. They speak of peace, they speak of stability. Peace and stability. These are two things many Pakistanis would like to see inside their own country first. Because outside the VIP corridors, there's a very, very different story unfolding. Parts of Pakistan are facing long power cuts. Not 1 hour, not 2 hours, in some cases up to 6 to 7 hours. Reports say the outages are happening during evening peak hours. That's when families return home. That is usually when children study. That's when shops get the most business. That is when people need lights, fans, and cooling the most. Instead, entire neighborhoods are going dark, turn by turn. One street has power, the next street does not. One building is lit, the next is in darkness. In Islamabad, many restaurants have been forced to operate in darkness. Staff have been left sitting idle. Customers have stopped coming.
ज़्यादा फर्क पड़ा है लोड शेडिंग की वजह से पड़ा है ठीक है लोड शेडिंग की वजह से हर घंटे के बाद बिजली जा रही है जबकि ये कह रहे थे कि इतनी बिजली नहीं जाएगी बिजली हर घंटे के बाद जा रही है अब गेस्ट का आना बिल्कुल बंद हो गया है जो मजदूर है उसको आधी दिहाड़ी दी जा रही है ठीक है उसके साथ भी ज़्यादती है और उसके बाद 10 बजे लोड शेडिंग अपना लॉकडाउन लगता है, अगर 5 मिनट 10 मिनट भी लेट हो जाए होटल सील कर देते हैं.
Now, why is this happening? Because energy has become too expensive. The war in Iran has shaken global oil and gas markets. But for Pakistan, it has exposed how weak the system really is. The Strait of Hormuz has become a pressure point for the world. For Pakistan, it has become a direct economic headache. It depends heavily on imported fuel, so when tensions rise there, prices rise at home. Besides, liquefied natural gas imports have also been disrupted. Pakistan's gas-based power plants have been running well below capacity. Hydropower has also been lower than expected, and the result is a power shortfall. Look at what Pakistan's own energy minister admitted to last month.
Since Pakistan's demand profile is a very unhealthy one, it's more consumer-driven than industry or growth-driven. So the cooling and the air conditioning load in the summers might have an effect on LNG not being there, might have an effect on a couple of hours of load shedding during the peak hours in the summers.
So in other words, summer is here, power is short, and the public should prepare to sweat through it. But that explanation only exposes the real problem. The government knew the crisis was coming, yet their response was not adequate. In fact, Shehbaz Sharif's government is asking the public to adjust, use less power, pay more for fuel, accept the cuts, and wait for relief. Now, this is the same government that can shut roads overnight, deploy security in hours, and prepare a 5-star hotel for foreign guests, but somehow cannot deliver steady electricity to its own people.
अब इतनी महंगाई हो गई है, एक तो लोड शेडिंग, दूसरे नंबर पे लॉकडाउन, एक महंगाई, एक कस्टमर आ भी नहीं रहा, आपके सामने है, टेबल से कुर्सी सारा कुछ खाली है. अब ये क्या चलेगा निज़ाम? कोई निज़ाम नहीं चल रहा हमारा. हम गरीब बंदे हैं, कहाँ से इतना सफ़र करके आ रहे हैं बच्चों के लिए रोज़ी कमाने के लिए. हमारी इसी हुकूमत से अपील है कि हमें जो है ना मजदूर लोगों के साथ तावन किया जाए.
That is the reality on the ground, not the banners, not the motorcades, not the grand diplomacy. But does Pakistan's army chief, Field Marshal Asim Munir, care? I don't think so. Remember, he is widely believed to be the de facto leader of the country, which is why I say this. He is said to be the one running the show in Pakistan. So as ordinary citizens suffer, Munir is busy making calls, holding delegation meetings, and cozying up to Donald Trump. While he chases the global spotlight, who is keeping the lights on in Pakistan? And as if the blackouts were not embarrassing enough, there is another problem for Pakistan. They do not have enough money either. Islamabad has to repay a loan it borrowed from other countries. In fact, it has been going door to door begging for help to repay it. Meanwhile, it has also made commitments to the International Monetary Fund. And what is that? That it would pass higher global fuel costs onto its own people. In simple words, the people will pay more. So look at the contrast tonight. In one part of Pakistan, officials are preparing conference rooms for foreign delegations. In another part of the country, people are counting hours of electricity. They can organize motorcades quickly, but apparently not megawatts. No security cordon can hide blackouts. No peace banner can power a fan. So yes, Pakistan may offer a table for talks. Yes, it may offer handshakes and headlines. But the hardest negotiation might not be the one between America and Iran. It could very well be between the Pakistani state and its own failures. Another flashpoint is brewing in Asia, this time in the Pacific waters near Japan. We are seeing two rival military drills unfolding there, one by the Chinese Navy, the other by America and its allies. For China, this is about projecting power beyond its backyard to sail and operate in far-off waters. But will this lead to military confrontation? First, look at the drills. China has deployed multiple warships. They are led by a guided missile destroyer called Vows. This is a Type 052 destroyer. It is the backbone of China's maritime operations. These destroyers are used to escort the big carriers. They can be used for air defense and anti-ship warfare. So where is it heading? This fleet passed near Japan yesterday through what is called the Yokohama waterway. Take a look at the map. This waterway is located between two Japanese islands, the Yokohama Island and the Amami Oshima Island. So the Chinese fleet crossed the waters yesterday. It will now hold drills in the Western Pacific. China says this is a routine voyage. They claim the drills will test far sea operations. They also say this is a perfectly legal move. But as always, it's not that simple. For starters, this route is a controversial one. China traditionally does not use the Yokohama waterway, and when they do, they don't talk about it. This is the first time they publicly announced such a voyage, and it's a deliberate choice. The Yokohama waterway is much closer to mainland Japan, so the idea here is to send a message, to project power against Tokyo. The question is why? Let's place these drills in context. China-Japan relations are already at a low point. The new Japanese Prime Minister, Sanae Takaichi, is a China hawk. Last year, she triggered a major row. Takaichi suggested that Japan would get involved if China invaded Taiwan. This led to a diplomatic standoff that is still simmering. Which brings us to the present time. Last Friday, Japan also undertook a daring voyage. They sent a destroyer through the Taiwan Strait. Again, let me pull up the map. The Taiwan Strait separates Taiwan and China. United States and its allies often send warships through this waterway. The idea is to deter China from making any moves. Of course, Beijing did not appreciate that. They accused Japan of provoking them.
The Japanese side is compounding the wrongdoing by sending the Self-Defense Force vessel into the Taiwan Strait to flex its muscles and deliberately provoke China. It exposes the dangerous attempts of certain people in Japan to conduct armed intervention and undermine the peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait.
So Tokyo isn't backing down. They have sent soldiers to the Philippines for a massive exercise. It's called the Balikatan 2026. It's a joint exercise conducted by the United States and the Philippines, and this edition is the largest ever. You've got 17,000 American and Filipino soldiers. They'll be joined by Japan, Canada, and France. The drills began today and will last for nearly 3 weeks. The soldiers will practice mock battles and conduct live fire exercises. Some of them will happen in the South China Sea. China claims almost all of these waters, but others like the Philippines and Vietnam, they also have claim here. For the Americans, this is about sending a message that Iran war or not, the US remains reliable in East Asia.
Regardless of the challenges elsewhere in the world, the United States' focus on the Indo-Pacific and our ironclad commitment to the Philippines remains unwavering.
Like I said, 2 rival drills, but will it lead to a confrontation? Well, the signs are not good. America's strategy is to contain China in these waters, basically prevent them from pushing out into the Pacific. For that, the United States depends on its allies, chief among them, Japan and the Philippines. Both countries have defense treaties with Washington. They also share bases and US weapons. Plus, right now, both countries are led by hawks. We already mentioned Japan's Takaichi. Over in the Philippines, you have Ferdinand Marcos Jr. He too has been vocal on the Taiwan issue. Now, logic says neither side benefits from a conflict. Just look at the economic equation. China is the biggest partner for these countries, whether that's trade or tourism or investments. So neither side is actively looking for war. But the problem is, miscalculations can always happen. Consider the recent China-Philippines flashpoints. Both sides have had multiple run-ins at sea. They've fired water cannons, they've rammed into each other. What if the next episode becomes more serious? That is the big worry. China's goal is to expand its influence deep in the Pacific, to cut down America's clout in the region, to take over maritime resources and disputed lands. America and its allies are trying to stop that from happening. They want to push China back inland. Now, these are two competing strategic goals. They're bound to collide and explode at one point. Things like diplomacy and trade may delay that collision, but such rival drills and miscalculations increase the risk. It's a bloodbath in big tech, and you can blame artificial intelligence for it. Layoffs across the tech industry have accelerated this year. Companies are no longer just cutting costs. They are rewriting how work gets done. Instead of hiring more people, they are building leaner teams, where AI tools do more with fewer humans. More than 73,000 jobs have been wiped out in the first quarter alone, across 95 companies, and the job cuts are far from over. While each company has its own reasons, from cost-cutting to restructuring, there is one common thread, and that is a deeper, more aggressive pivot towards AI. Let's start with the latest. Meta is preparing for a fresh wave of layoffs, with the first round expected around the 20th of May. The company, which owns Facebook and Instagram, plans to cut about 10% of its global workforce. That's close to 8,000 employees in just the first phase. And more cuts could follow later this year. Reports suggest executives may even adjust the scale based on how fast AI capabilities evolve. If and when this goes through, it would be Meta's biggest round of layoffs since its 2022-2023 restructuring. That is when it cut about 21,000 jobs during what it called the year of efficiency. But this time the company is financially stronger. So it's not about survival. CEO Mark Zuckerberg is investing heavily in AI. He's building systems that can write code and execute complex tasks autonomously. And Meta is not alone. Across big tech, this is the story. Technology company Snap Inc. is cutting around 1,000 jobs. That's nearly 16% of its workforce. CEO Evan Spiegel says AI is helping automate repetitive tasks and speed up operations. The company is also eliminating hundreds of unfilled roles, signaling a hiring freeze. Amazon has already trimmed about 30,000 corporate jobs as it streamlines operations and doubles down on AI. Oracle, founded by Larry Ellison, has cut between 20,000 to 30,000 jobs as it pours investment into AI infrastructure. Singapore-based Crypto.com has laid off 12% of its staff, with CEO Chris Marsalik saying these were roles that he says, and I'm quoting here, do not adapt in our new world. Software company Retaliation has cut about 1,600 jobs, around 10% of its workforce, to self-fund AI investments. Co-founder Mike Cannon-Brookes says, and I'm quoting again, people and AI together will drive the best outcomes. Fintech company Block Inc. has also slashed jobs, citing efficiency gains from AI. And the list goes on. From Salesforce to Pinterest to WiseTech Global, companies are cutting jobs with an aim to redirect the money into AI-driven roles. Now, this isn't just a wave of layoffs that we're talking about. We're talking about people with degrees, with student loans, home loans. They're all being let go. And that constant threat of job loss. And even if you escape the job cut, you're left with survivor's guilt. It is the stress felt by employees who keep their jobs. Can you imagine? But watch colleagues around them lose their jobs. That is what's causing survivor's guilt. The fear of being next, the pressure to do more with less, the constant uncertainty. It's now taking a serious toll on mental health. Take a look at the numbers on your screens right now. Employee health platforms are reporting a 4-fold spike in telehealth consultations for mental health issues. 77% of these cases are from employees aged 21 to 30. Studies also show up to 80% of IT professionals report feeling stressed, and over 70% show symptoms of conditions like depression, insomnia, and anxiety. The shift to AI isn't just changing how companies operate, it's changing how employees see themselves. Many now feel their skills are becoming obsolete. And who is most at risk? Young professionals. Early career employees are facing a loss of confidence and rising anxiety in an increasingly competitive job market, that is. A 2026 study found 44% of Gen Z employees admit that they've actively sabotaged instead of embracing the AI initiatives taken by their companies, out of fear of losing their jobs. This is the new reality of big tech: leaner teams, smarter systems, and harder questions. Because in the end, the future of work will not just be determined by what AI can do. It will be defined by what happens to the people it replaces. The view from the front lines of AI is sobering. The question now is, can we get the human part right? And now our final story. A year ago, robots at a Beijing half marathon were, well, less athletes, more accident-prone appliances. They stumbled, wandered off course. Fast forward to this year, and the same story has had a serious upgrade. Because those clumsy, confused machines have now turned into sleek, speedy runners. Not just keeping up with humans, but outrunning them. So how did robots go from can't run to can't be caught? Here's the story.
On a bright Sunday morning in Beijing, something quietly unsettling and undeniably fascinating unfolded on the racetrack. A half marathon, usually a test of human grit, stamina, and questionable life choices, turned into a showcase of circuits, sensors, and suspiciously perfect pacing. Runners showed up, but so did the robots. And this time, they didn't just participate, they dominated. In recent editions, the Beijing E-Town Half Marathon has turned into a futuristic showcase with humans and robots sharing the course. While they run in the same event, they compete in separate categories, humans against humans, and robots in their own bracket. Last year's edition of this humanoid half marathon felt more like a blooper reel than a sporting event. The robots stumbled, stalled, ran in other directions out of control, and in some cases simply gave up. Only 6 out of the 21 robots that participated finished the race. The robot which had the best time finished in 2 hours, 40 minutes, and 42 seconds. The winner of the race amongst humans was Ethiopia's Elias Desta. Her timing was 1 hour and 2 minutes. Fast forward to 2026 and the glow-up is hard to ignore. More than 100 humanoid robots lined up this time, up from just 21 the year before. And instead of collapsing mid-race, many of them ran like they had somewhere important to be. The biggest headline grabber was a robot developed by Honor, a Chinese smartphone maker which finished the 21-kilometer race in a blistering 50 minutes and 26 seconds. The company named the bright red robot Lightning. It reportedly ran at an average speed of about 25 kilometers per hour.
We are from Honor's Chitian dashing team, and today we are very honored to have won first place in the competition. Behind this result, in fact, lies the contribution and hard work of our entire team. We only began fully preparing this project last year, based on transferring platform capabilities from our mobile devices.
The human winner of the marathon in 2026 was Zhao Haiji of China, who completed the race in 1 hour, 7 minutes and 47 seconds. To avoid any accidental man versus machine pileups, organizers smartly placed robots and humans on separate tracks. Which is probably for the best, because no one wants to be overtaken by a jogging algorithm while tying their shoelaces. Around 12,000 human runners took part, but many found themselves overshadowed by their metallic counterparts. Some robots reportedly moved with surprising fluidity, almost mimicking elite sprinters like Usain Bolt, while others still looked like they were figuring out how legs work. But undoubtedly, the gap is closing, and fast. One of the biggest shifts this year wasn't just speed, it was independence. Nearly 40% of the robots navigated the course autonomously, without remote control. That means no human joystick, no behind-the-scenes tinkering. Just pure AI making real-time decisions over a 21-kilometer route. It's an impressive technical leap, but also slightly eerie. For the crowd gathered in Beijing's Yizhuang district, the spectacle was equal parts thrilling and thought-provoking. Some watched in awe as robots zipped past before they could even pull out their phones. Others couldn't help but wonder what this means beyond the finish line.
If we're talking from the perspective of society as a whole, I do want technology to keep improving. But as someone who works for a living, I'm a little worried about it sometimes. I feel like technology is advancing so fast that it might start affecting people's jobs.
For centuries, endurance races have been a celebration of human limits. How far we can push, how long we can last. Last year, the robots couldn't even keep up. This year, they didn't just catch up, they outran their human competitors.
And amid global shortages, Indians are battling a new crisis. Diet Coke vanishing from shelves, from Mumbai to Bengaluru to Gurugram. Delivery apps are getting hammered. Fingers hover, refreshing obsessively for that magic in-stock glow. The internet in this situation has plunged into pure chaos. Sad reels of empty fridges and dramatic posts like, "My zero-calorie soulmate is gone. My emotional support drink has abandoned me." So what is causing this? Apparently, aluminum shortages, supply chain issues, and packaging rules. So yes, your Diet Coke is stuck in traffic. Until then, my advice, stay strong, and may your cart one day finally show in stock. And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell a story. US astronaut performs traditional folk dance from Bihu aboard the International Space Station. In Australia, a stranded humpback whale was rescued using specialized swings. And an international kite festival has kicked off on the French Atlantic coast. Finally, taking you back in history, on this day in 1943, the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising began. as Nazi forces moved in to deport the remaining Jewish population. Resistance fighters inside the Warsaw Ghetto chose to fight back. Outnumbered and outgunned, they launched one of the earliest and largest acts of armed Jewish resistance during World War II. Leaving you on that note, thank you for watching. See you tomorrow.